All right, so here we are. We've got our 100-foot brush. I've got it in all my different views here. I can kind of zoom in on it in the different views, side, front, top, 3D view. So let's talk about this 3D view for a little bit. So if you put your mouse into this viewport, okay, so the mouse, your cursor has to be in this window, and then just tap on your Z button, okay, Z, zebra, Z. So I hit Z. And what that does is it locks my mouse into my like they call it like fly mode or something like that, but it's basically your 3D navigation mode. So when I press Z, just tap on your Z button, it'll either release your mouse, or if your mouse is in here, if I hit Z, now my mouse is locked in, and now I just use the WASD keys to fly around and my mouse to navigate. So now I can fly around, I can click on things. I don't have a lot to click on here, but I can select things inside here. So this is how we're going to kind of, get the character's viewpoint of what everything looks like. Okay, so that's my camera view there. So I'm going to hit Z. So you'll have to get in a habit of doing this. I press on Z to release my mouse. Now I can work in the other windows. I come back over here. I hit Z again. Now I'm in this window, Z, release, all right? Now, this grid, all right? So this grid here has a default size, and I don't have it memorized. It's not really worth memorizing. It's not really that big of a deal. But we can change the grid size because objects in the editor want to snap to the grid. And so I can adjust this grid size, okay? So if you look across the top here on your main menu, way over here on the left, there's two little buttons. It's got like a grid, and there's a minus and a plus. So if I click on the plus, it increases the grid size. So now I've got this massive grid, okay? Now the problem with this is when I try to move stuff, it's going to jump around onto those massive jumps. It's going to jump between these grids, okay? The other one goes smaller. So I like to work in the smallest grid size, and it gets down to that 0.75. So these little boxes are just under an inch, and it gives me the greatest level of fidelity for moving stuff. Now I don't like to use I don't like to turn off snap to grid. I like things to stay on grid because when we're placing objects, if you're not snapping to the grid where the objects don't align to the grid, what'll happen is you might have furniture that's floating like a half a grid because the furniture just for whatever reason can't get on that grid line, or so it creates problems for you down the road. So most of the time we are going to operate with snap to grid on, but we get the best degree of flexibility here. You can see me snapping this between these grid lines with this tiniest grid. So I'm able to move things at a 0.75 inch movement. So it's a very tiny amount of space, it's 3/4 of an inch. So I'm able to adjust things at that tiny scale. And it works for pretty much everything. There's going to be a few objects in the game that you're going to need to turn off snap to grid, but most objects you're not going to need to. Everything will be right lined up on the grid, and we should be fine. Now, moving stuff, okay? So if I make a box, okay, so I'm going to take my block tool here, and let's just make a box. I don't really care how big it is. We're just going to make a box, okay? So I press enter, remember, enter to create it. So now I've got this box sitting here. I don't move things in the 3D view because it's hard to move things three-dimensionally in this view and keep it lined up. Like if I move this forward and backward, I might think I'm moving it towards me, but I might actually be moving it down into the floor. So moving things, you're generally going to use your 2D views to move them, and then your 3D view is just, kind of fine-tuning it or just checking placement. So I'm going to take my selection tool, okay, selection tool. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click that little X in the middle. Remember that little X in the middle allows me to grab it. Okay, let me get it, or I can grab it here, either one. Once I have it, I can click it and I can move it. Okay, so I'm just dragging it around. Same thing, I can do it from this view. I can grab it, move it around. I can select and drag, select and drag. Okay, so it's really easy to move stuff. All right, so in this video, we did our grid. We got our grid down to the smallest size, and then we also looked at how to move stuff. All right, we have one more video for today.